Podcast. We're talking Batman, Macabre Podcast Universe.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
And welcome to the Macabre Podcast Universe. This is the podcast where we exist to prove people wrong when they say
That sequels are never better than the originals.
And we're diving into a brand new series. We just got cut up and eaten with Hannibal, and now we are stalking the night with Batman.
Yes.
And so that means today we're jumping into Tim Burton's Batman from 1989. And with us, we have two incredible guests. We have Kevin and Will Hines from Screw It, We're Just Going to Talk About Comics. An amazing podcast that I've been binging like crazy. And if you like comic books, or even if you don't, you got to check it out. Welcome, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for giving me top listing over Will. That was nice.
Oh, yeah. I hope I'm not in
I
trouble
noticed
for
that too. No, you've started a thing.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fight between me and Kevin.
It gives
now.
me the power, at least for this weekend now. I'm going to ride that.
Yep.
I'm going to ride that high for a couple days.
Yeah. You got the
You
power
should,
for a
yeah.
little while.
Mm-hmm.
I'll win it back.
Yeah, it's a tug of war.
Yeah, so...
I will say I have listened to your podcast too. I am not a comic book person very much. I grew up reading comic strips more
Okay.
than anything.
Okay.
But listening to your podcast, it is still, for someone who hasn't read it, it's very enjoyable. And
Thank you.
I don't even remember which one I was listening to because I'm not familiar with any
Sure,
of them.
sure,
But
sure.
it's just fun to listen to you guys talk about kind of like how like ridiculous some of the characters are, or like
Yeah.
an issue that they're in.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
We love that stuff too.
Love it.
We find it all ridiculous, and yet we also love it with the sincerity. I can't understand why we can do both those things, but we do. We think it's silly, and then we also go like, but it's also perfect.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
there'll be the most ridiculous villain, like a giant robot called the Living Brain that is slow and weird and should not be a threat, and we'll laugh at it. But you know what? I love that
It's
issue.
a great issue.
And I love the Living Brain.
Salute to teenagers.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah, that's
I
right.
know that you guys are years away from when you did your Amazing Spider-Man run, but I'm experiencing it for the first time. And the Living Brain issue, having reread it recently, I was like, man, this plot is wild. And this
Yeah.
is such a non-scary villain.
Yeah.
This computer on wheels. And it was one of the funniest episodes.
Well,
You know, reading old comics is like watching old movies. You have to sort of like put yourself in that time period to understand the priorities of the story, sort of like,
Yeah.
you know, reading an old issue of Spider-Man. Spider-Man was not yet this like institution that was the basis of like movies and TV shows and toys. It was a superhero that was a year and a half old, and they were trying stuff out.
they're like,
so
what are we doing this month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a real freedom and a recklessness to it that definitely made for some loopy choices sometimes, not to mention it was just the 60s. So we're talking 50 years out of date.
And like
What are we
45-year-old
now?
men writing 18-year-old characters.
Yeah, high schoolers.
Really, it's a miracle that it worked at all
Yeah.
when we stack all
Right.
those things up. But we still love it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're biased, but we would tell anybody to read those early Spider-Man stories.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's actually a really good transition into this movie, because this is pretty much, I mean, we could talk about Superman and the Donner Superman, but I feel like this is really the blockbuster superhero tentpole beginning of this whole time that we live in, is the Batman movie.
I agree.
Yeah,
It was a watershed milestone movie.
it was, I would say, like the tentpoles are Superman, then this Batman movie, and then probably the first Spider-Man movie kind of launched it to another level. Because like this Batman movie was followed by lots of like mediocre and bad superhero movies, but like before that,
Yeah.
they weren't making them at all.
Yeah.
Right. This movie was like, so Kevin and I, we saw it opening night together with our other brother, Brian, and a friend of mine named George. And it was like a family event. It was like, I was 19 and Kevin was 14 or whatever, somewhere around that. And we were unbelievably excited to see this movie. We were ready. I recall being ready for like months beforehand.
The hype for
waiting for the Batman
wow.
movie.
the hype for Batman was, unprecedented
Yeah.
for a movie that
I
was
still,
not like.
I still haven't seen a movie that's been hyped like that.
I mean, I think like the Star Wars prequels probably had this level of hype, though I didn't affect me as much. But the Batman hype off of like no movies.
That's insane.
The trailer for the Burton Batman movie was like insanely intriguing. I mean, Burton was huge, right? He had done
Yeah.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands, and was sort of like he was an odd choice to do Batman because he wasn't like an action guy. He was he was an artsy fringe
Right.
indie dude.
Yeah.
Right.
The freak kids liked Burton or whatever.
Yeah.
So for him to do like a mainstream property was interesting.
It was a weird
and fun.
director, a comedic actor in the lead. Danny Elfman had never done like a big budget action movie soundtrack. No, it should. That's also a movie that should not have worked.
And the trailer was just all these Tim Burton visuals. If you've seen the movie, they're the trailer. It's just it's cool shots of Tim Burton's Gotham. This like very highly stylized throwback world, and like Jack Nicholson, who still is a huge star, but at the time was one of the biggest stars in the world, decked out in his Joker makeup, but you only got these glimpses and flashes of the visual world for like I for what seemed like months. Maybe it was only weeks. But I feel like you'd see like the Batman trailer, like 6 months before and be like, oh my God, what is this? I couldn't wait.
There was no internet, so you couldn't like look up and rewatch the trailer. There wasn't like really even like magazines that would print photos would be like these grainy black and white reproductions that you couldn't really see anything of. But like they covered it on the news. It was big enough. I remember like Batman's coming was like, the Channel 4 news at 7 would talk about Batmania.
And the main impression of Batman in pop culture was the old Adam West, Burt Ward, Bam, Zoom, Pam TV show Batman, which Kevin and I also loved and everybody loved. And that is still a big thing in pop culture that gets referred to. But like that was what Batman was to the general population. Goofy, toothless, kids, campy, kind of self-parody, a great time. But now is this movie that wanted in one fell swoop to erase that and replace it with a weird, illustrator's goth art vision. Man, I'm getting excited now. Like I'd watch it right now.
I don't know if that movie would have had to been terrible for us not to like it, at least on opening night. Opening night, we were already
so keyed up. It could have been 2.5 hours of blank screen, and we would have been like, I think it was good. Yeah, no, I think they made the right decision.
Yeah, that's like when when Guardians 2 came out. I went into it like, I don't care. It could be nothing, and I'm going to like this movie.
Because I just love these characters so much.
Yeah.
Both those movies are great.
Yeah.
They're so fun.
Those are some of our favorites
and
from
Guardians 1 was like
MCU.
such an insane relief of how fun it was right away.
Yes.
Like Guardians 1. Actually, I mean, it opens with that very sad sequence of his mother dying.
Right.
But then it goes into this insanely fun opening credits, that hard switch. And I'm like, oh, this movie's going to be cool.
Yeah, I felt for me, with the Marvel stuff, that I was at a time where I was just so much fatigue. And I don't know anything about Guardians. So it was just like, oh, they're fun and they have fun music. That's as simple as I need it to be.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you mentioned the Batman hype, because in doing the research, I was watching like behind the scenes and stuff and seeing that people were going to movies to buy a ticket, watch the trailer, and then just walking out of the movie, like they were doing with Phantom Menace, which is just insane.
Like Kevin said, it was the only way you could see the trailer, and you wanted to get another look at it to maybe try to figure out what this shot was and what are they showing me here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on top of that, people were like, the big thing was like people were shaving bat signals into their heads. Like that was a big thing. Like there's a few people in our audience that had the bat symbol shaved into their head. That's how excited people were for this movie. Like,
and we were there opening night. What if it was bad? That guy would have felt like a crazy.
And those opening nights were not. This is a midnight showing on Thursday, which were rare. I feel like at the time they didn't.
I had never heard of it before. We grew up in Danbury, Connecticut, and the movie theater we saw it at was the Palace on Main Street.
Yeah.
And so Friday was the day that movies opened generally. So if a movie came out, you'd go Friday night if you really wanted to see it. And this was the first time that Thursday at midnight.
So it's technically Friday.
the earliest possible
Yeah.
time the theater was allowed to show it. And I mean, we were like very rule following kids. For us to go see a movie at midnight was kind of naughty. I mean, even that was sort of
right,
like,
right.
Because Brian went and Brian was 12. Like that's pretty young.
Yeah.
It's also the Palace Theater wasn't like the nicest place, but it was great.
yeah, it was a little run down. It was. I mean, it was one of those like used to be a glorious movie theater and had then become sort of run down. And
One screen was chopped into 3 type of places.
yeah, and like this was
Yeah.
Danbury was like whatever. It's this
It's Connecticut,
large
yeah.
town / small city in Connecticut, unremarkable, but like big enough that it did have sort of, I don't know, bad areas, like economically
Oh,
depressed
yeah.
neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And this movie theater was in one of them because it was downtown, which had been like economically devastated by shopping malls. I mean, this all sounds insane, but in the late 80s, this was like things people talked about. The downtowns of places were being ruined
Yeah.
because nobody was going there to shop anymore. So we went to this area at midnight to watch Batman, and it kind of added to the mystique.
I guess having
Yeah, I think my first midnight showing was, I think, The Dark Knight Rises. We went to that.
Yeah.
That was my first. I'm now realizing that my first midnight experience was a Batman movie.
Ooh, nice.
And for me, it was like
That hype was pretty wild for that too.
it was so fun to wait in line for hours. I've never done that before. But I know for me, I love Burton. He's like one of my favorites. But for some reason, I had not seen this movie until like 2 years ago, and I don't know why.
Wait, was that the first
it's
time?
kind of
when you
out of
were-
his.
Oh man.
It's out of his
Yeah.
normal thing, right? Like normally he does sort
Right.
of dark, twisted versions of kid things. Is kind of where I think he
Right.
normally lives.
in a way it sort of
Yeah.
ruins him, like because he keeps trying to do like when his blockbuster movies are his least exciting movies. It's his sort of weirder, smaller movies I think that are more fun. But every time he tries to do something that's more for everyone, people are like, oh, I didn't like it. It's like, his movies aren't for everyone normally.
Yeah.
But Batman
Right,
did
right.
hit. Batman
Yeah,
was
Batman
an
hit.
enormous hit. Because then after the movie came out, they still would run the trailer, and the commercials on TV would say, "How many times have you seen Batman?" Do you remember
Yeah.
that one?
Oh,
Kevin?
wow.
Yeah.
Almost like daring you, but I'd be like 3 or whatever. Answer
Yeah.
the television.
Well, I remember. So the first time I saw this, I must have been like, I want to say like 10 or 12, and it was the first superhero movie I ever saw.
Oh wow!
And like the next day, I had my mom help me wrangle up a cape and a little mask.
Yeah.
And I created this character named Mysterious Man who could, go through walls and be invisible. Little did I know, of course, there's like 1,000 heroes who have those powers. And I basically recreated Batman, but with my character all the time. And then when I saw the Spider-Man movies, all of a sudden, all my villains turned into Spider-Man villains with, maybe they're made out of different materials or something. So like this movie, even though I don't watch it often, it's actually a very influential movie for my imagination.
Yeah.
And I was just overtaken by Batman. And then, I mean, I love Nicholson in this movie so much. I don't know what you guys think, but
love it.
I went through a weird thing. Like the first time I loved the movie was perfect when we first saw it because it was a kid and it was the hype and everything else. And then after a time, I sort of grew bored of it when I was maybe like 10 years ago or whatever. I was like, it's okay. And I rewatched it last night, and Jack Nicholson is so fun in this movie. That was my first takeaway. Was like, oh, he's better than I remember in this, and it's also a very different role for him. He's so silly.
yeah.
He doesn't get to be silly that much.
He would do anything Tim Burton told him, I think. Like,
But this was the first
Yes.
movie they did together.
is this before Mars Attacks?
Way before.
Yeah.
By the time he did Mars
Um,
Attacks, he was a Burton guy. He was like,
Yeah.
I'll play every role if he asks me to.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's great. I mean, he stole the movie. Like, I think of Jack Nicholson as the star and more than Michael Keaton,
Yeah.
although I love Keaton's performance too. But
Yeah, it's Jack's
it is a
movie.
weird movie. As a story, it's really strange and like stuff starts and then doesn't get played out. It feels very uneven. Some characters seem like Jerry Hall seems like introduced the Joker's girlfriend, who he also, I think, like scars her face or something.
Yes,
Like that's not
yeah.
really told fully, and it's almost like,
No.
why are you telling us that halfway? And a lot of the signature lines, like when Keaton says to to the Joker, you want to you want to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. I'm like, what is that from?
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like just to pay off that he killed his parents, which is kind of. I
But
think
how
when I
does
was a
he-
kid, I
The
watched
Joker-
that and I thought, "Oh, that's cool."
The Joker
but
says
it's a
it
little
to
weird now.
the Joker says it to Bruce Wayne. Will
So
he shoots Bruce
isn't he
Wayne
like,
before he shoots Bruce Wayne? He says, "You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Shoots Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne collapses on the ground. He has like a serving tray to
Like a
catch the
plate
bullet.
or something. Yeah.
And then Bruce Wayne's like, when he says it, Bruce Wayne goes, "What did you say?" And then later on has a flashback to the death of his parents, where the Joker says that to Bruce Wayne as a
okay.
child.
So that one makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then Batman says it again later. That one makes complete sense, other than the fact that he only says it to Bruce Wayne the one time. He doesn't say it to any of the other people he kills.
Yeah, right.
I
That's
say
true.
this to
That's
all
true.
my prey. No, you don't. You said it to one guy twice.
Right.
But
Okay, yes, you've done a better job of explaining why it stood out as weird to me. But I just remember when I watched it, I'm like, this doesn't quite. And then how does Joker have a gun that shoots a plane?
yeah,
Like just because it has a long barrel, that's
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
strange.
yeah.
Right.
Like
That's
part-
the kind of zany stuff though that makes me even though again I did not grow up watch it like in the time that this came out, but it makes me like nostalgic for this because I mean I feel like the current DC universe for the most part is this really dour we have to prove to the audience that this is serious.
yeah.
And that's why, I mean, I don't know what you guys thought of Joker, but we're not fans of that movie. And it's like the most dour movie in the
Yeah.
world. And I'm like, where's the fun?
I did like that movie, although all my friends tell me I shouldn't. Looks like my friend group, it was not popular. But I hear what you're saying. In general, I don't like it when superhero movies are a drag. And if there's no
Yeah.
joy in it, they're missing out.
have you guys seen Birds
Yeah.
of Prey? The Harley.
I have not.
We
No,
have
you-
not.
Yeah.
It's an uneven movie, but it definitely feels like that director of that movie loved Tim Burton's movies. Like the world feels
Oh, okay.
like this
Oh.
is more inspired by the Tim Burton movies than anything Nolan did, or the Joker movie, or anything else, or even the first Suicide Squad movie. This feels like it is set closer to the Tim Burton Gotham. It's its own thing, and it's weird and it's uneven, and I kind of like it a lot, even though I don't think it's a great
Yeah.
movie. But it feels like it just shows that Tim Burton's movies still are having this reverberating effect to this day. I mean,
Yeah.
Batman still looks the Ben Affleck Batman still looks like he is an evolution of this Michael Keaton Batman. He's not like his own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like it's still these
Yeah.
hard rubber suits. Like there's a line in this movie where Joker makes a joke about Batman washing his tights. It's like he doesn't wear tights in this movie. He doesn't wear tights in any movie.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's because of this movie, weirdly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's jump into some of the production.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll hit you with some of the people on here. We've already talked pretty extensively about Burton, but we have a screenplay by Sam Hamm,
Right.
who goes on to do Batman Returns and one episode of the Batman animated series.
Ooh.
The screenplay is also by Warren Scarron, who did Beetlejuice, Beverly Hills Cop 2, uncredited on Top Gun. Story by Sam Hamm. As we mentioned, Danny Elfman on the music, which, like many things with this movie, it's weird to think that it was a risk to hire Danny Elfman for this type of movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elfman.
Same with Burton.
Elfman had done the Pee Wee movie, and that's it, I think. Did he do
Yeah.
Edward Scissorhands?
He did Beetlejuice as well.
Beetlejuice, yeah. But he
Um,
again, those are like weird comedic movies. To
Right.
do like a serious action
Mhm.
movies is crazy, and also it feels like Danny Elfman's like a no-brainer for those sorts of movies.
Right.
right, and I just know. I mean, he makes one of my favorite scores ever, which is the Spider-Man scores
Sure.
are that. I mean, it gets me so amped every time.
I mean, this Batman
But,
score is as iconic as almost anything like John Williams has done. Like it's Batman.
Absolutely. It's so
we
good
saw
that
it,
they.
we saw it opening
Yeah, go
night.
ahead.
The opening sequence is like the camera is journeying through what looks like a cement labyrinth for a couple seconds, and then it like pulls
Mhm.
out, and we realize that we
minutes.
were inside a big Batman logo, and it's as the score is like building up and it ends on this big climax as we're looking at Batman. And so at that point, we're 2 minutes into the movie, and our crowd burst out into a huge round of applause.
Just in the
that.
sight of the bat symbol.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
fun.
That sounds awesome.
When we were watching it the other night and it gets to that scene at the end where it goes up, the Batwing goes up into the moon, I was just imagining how insane that crowd must have been when you see
So
that.
we have a story about that as well.
Yeah.
This is a funny story, I think. There's a scene where the Batwing, which is shaped like a bat, really cool design, flies in front of the moon for seemingly no reason in the movie other than it looks
It looks cool. That's it.
Yeah.
But this sequence is happening, like the Batwing is flying around. That hasn't happened yet. And Will leans over to like pick up popcorn or drop something. I don't know what it is.
I kicked my tub of popcorn and was like picking some of
So
it
he
up
leans
'cause I
over
felt
for
bad.
what could have been 5 seconds at most. And as he's leaning down, the crowd erupts into a roar. And Will pops his head up. And like, as far as he can
It's
tell,
already over.
the wing is just flying around normal still.
Yeah, that shot is so unnecessary. The Batwing's flying, a shot of it in front of the moon, back to the Batwing flying. I looked down just for the amount of time for that cutaway, and it lives on in our brother lore
Yeah.
to this
It's
day.
just it was like, what happened there? And it was like, how do you explain? It's like, hey, it flew in front of the moon. It doesn't sound that cool, but the audience blew up for that
Yeah.
moment.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Sorry you missed it.
Still, when I watch the movie, I refuse to look at that scene. I'll never see it.
Hey, always bending over
Yeah.
and just going, I'm going to
Yep.
check the
Yep.
ground
It's a
here.
Pavlovian thing. He bends over at that moment.
So the cinematographer for this movie is Roger Pratt, who we've discussed in our Harry Potter series because he did Goblet of Fire and
Okay.
Chamber of Secrets.
Still working.
This movie comes out. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still working. This movie comes out June 23rd, 1989. It has a budget of $35 million. Domestically, it makes $251 million. And worldwide, it makes $411 million.
Not bad.
That's insane.
Yeah, for that time, that's huge. Also, the worldwide box offices weren't as big as they are now. Now they're like 4 times the domestic. What did not exist then.
I mean, that's a pretty good domestic total today. If you got 251 domestically,
Especially off
That's
a budget
amazing.
of 30
So-
million. This is an indie film.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, basically, yeah.
Rewatching, there's very little CGI. There's a couple like weirdly animated moments.
Yeah.
But there isn't CGI. There isn't. I mean, there's definitely models and stuff. It's
Yeah.
a very built. It's a lot of lot scenes, sets, and things like
Mhm.
that. It feels like such a throwback, even though it's the dawn of superhero movies. It doesn't do a lot of the things we expect from superhero movies.
What's the animated part?
There's like a scene where like you see Batman way down below on a balcony, and he turns around and walks, and it's clearly like a little cartoon Batman. And there's a
Right.
couple.
It's like it looks almost stop motion.
Yeah, and there's a couple spotlights that look animated that's drawn
Yeah.
in, and also when the Joker falls to his death, that's drawn.
Yes.
Oh wow.
And then when the Batmobile, when he like arms it. Or
Yeah, it's like a
whatever-
stop motion,
Yeah.
like kind
Yeah.
of thing. I wish someone would. I mean, not to be a like, man, movies used to be so good because I love current movies and I love superhero movies now. But
Yeah.
it would be so cool if someone was like, you know what? Let's just make, the Eternals or something. We only use stop motion animation or something just wild like
it does
that.
seem like just I know what you're saying, and I've thought that too, but really what it just some directors seem to have their movies look good, whether they use CG or practical effects
true.
or a combination. Zack Schneider, for all of the bad movies he's made and for all the flaws in some of the Zack Schneider movies, they do always look really good. Like
The effects look
yeah.
good.
stills from like Zack Snyder movies are always like, "Ooh, what's going on here?" Like, he just has
Yeah.
an eye for that, and Tim Burton had an eye for that. His movies always look
Mhm.
really good. David Lynch movies always look sort of beautiful. Who's the guy who did? David Fincher movies always kind of are
Oh yeah.
compelling to watch. Some people, you give them any tool, animation, CG, practical effects, they have the judgment to know how much to
Right.
use of all of it.
And I feel like in the Marvel universe, to me, I think James Gunn runs the table on that. 'Cause I just think the Guardians movies are so colorful and the action's so interesting that
I had not thought about
enjoy
James
watching
Gunn as a
those.
visual guy. That's probably true.
James Gunn.
I think of
yeah.
him mostly for his sense of humor. Like he just
Yeah.
has such a sure handle on what's funny, way more than a lot of directors. But yeah, his stuff looks good too.
I mean, I've only seen the movie Birds of Prey by the director. I don't even know her name, but she's got a visual style. I'm curious to see another movie by her just to see how much that carries over. Because one of the things I liked about the movie is it had a look to it, a very distinct look.
Yeah, I remember from the trailers, it's like, there's like a theme or like a
There's a
thesis
style
that's
to
going
this.
on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Robert Rodriguez is another one who's got his movies were very stylish.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of CGI, but
yeah. When are we gonna cover Spy Kids, huh?
Someday we will.
Kathy Yan is the director.
yeah, okay,
of
that's
Birds
it.
of
Yeah,
Prey.
it's a really interesting visual movie.
Well, we're gonna be covering it later
Great.
this year, so we will for sure have seen it by the end of this year.
Great.
Maybe that'll be a bright spot for us in that franchise.
I don't
Yeah.
want to overhype it.
I'm glad
It's
to hear it.
very uneven.
Yeah.
It's very uneven, but
Yeah.
in the DC universe, I enjoyed it a lot.
Sure.
How about the fact that there's a
And
couple
I
of
do
songs?
like the cast.
How about the fact that in Batman there's a couple songs by Prince that just show up?
Yeah.
That was like a really weirdly big part of this movie also. Like Prince, one of the biggest pop stars of the time, just writes two songs that to me don't go with the vibe of the movie or anything at all.
No.
And the Joker's henchmen are dancing to that song at one
A
point.
couple
Mhm.
times during the
I
during
mean,
the
one
parade,
of my
during the
favorite
museum.
scenes is
Yeah.
the art gallery scene, and they come in with the boombox, and it's just playing this goofy Prince song,
Yeah.
and
Bat
I'm just
Dance.
going, let's do like I am just so into the movie at this point. It's just amazing.
One of the things I think one of the reasons I soured on this movie in my middle years is because like I remembered all the like the serious Joker moments, wait till they get a load of me and smashing the mirror and where does he get these like all the lines, right? And then rewatching it, there's all these scenes where he's like wearing silly costumes and dancing. He dances so much in this movie. I was like, oh yeah, this is very much a Joker. This is even though he's killing a lot of people, which I don't need my Joker to do. He's a lighthearted Joker in a weird way.
Yeah.
I loved it. It's so funny. That museum scene is great where they're just walking around. They're all like destroying art, but like the one disturbed painting is like, I like this one.
Yeah.
It speaks.
It
to
was
me.
kind of a good like transition for the audience because they were so used to Batman because of the 60s TV show being nothing but like goofy fun silliness. Like Nicholson sort of embodied a piece of that, like in a way that was like a good like connector for people. Be like, oh yeah, there's
Sure.
the
yeah.
energy that I'm used to for Batman. Nicholson's doing it.
Yeah.
But by the end of the movie, you're like converted to this like gothic, way cooler looking Batman. Woo, man, is it good.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton. Like Michael Keaton had just been a comedian. He had not done anything.
I know.
Not only not serious, he had done one drama, but it wasn't like a big hit, Clean and Sober. And he hadn't done any like action movies. It was really strange casting.
Yeah.
It would be like
Well,
it would be
and-
like making Zach Galifianakis Batman or something like that. It would just be like it sounded weird.
Which, you know what? Zach Galifianakis as Batman, that's almost more exciting to me than any of the upcoming
Maybe it
projects.
was like making Ryan Reynolds Deadpool though. Maybe that's
Yeah, but
maybe
Deadpool's
that-
a silly character, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
He's more
Yeah.
overtly comedic.
Like if you made
yeah.
Michael Keaton, I mean, I don't think it's a good casting, a Spider-Man character, it makes more sense.
Mhm.
I think
yeah,
people
Batman is just so grim and serious. It was really strange.
people had a fear of Michael Keaton being in this Batman meant it was going to be campy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the purists
Yet-
were like, "Oh no, it's going to be another Bam Zoom situation."
Yeah. And I have some notes here that let's see, 50,000 protest letters were sent to Warner Brothers after they announced Keaton. And then once they announced that Nicholson was on the project, everyone was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
Now there's like some prestige to this. Maybe this
Yeah.
isn't going to be bad. I don't know.
I mean, I used to read
just
like
wild.
comic book news or whatever. There was this magazine or whatever, I don't know what you call it, called Amazing Heroes that came out every week, and it was just like news about the comic book industry. I started reading this in like 1986. This was not like a big publication. It was very like niche if you were just like a comic book fan. And comic books were smaller deal in the mid 80s than they are like now, because they weren't like directly linked to so many television and movie properties. So I'd read this Amazing Heroes, and they would cover any movement on the Batman project. So like when Sam Hamm got announced as a screenwriter, that was like news. It was like they picked a screenwriter. His name is Sam Hamm, and it's like Tim Burton is going to direct this, and that was all like event. Like the comic book fandom was scrutinizing the Batman movie from the get-go. And the fact that I think they pretty much, the movie did win everybody over. I mean, comic book fans are notoriously fussy. I'm sure there were lots of people who didn't like X, Y, or Z, but like it was beloved.
It definitely was a movie that in the year it came out, and the year that like followed, I don't remember ever hearing a bad thing about it. You hear more bad things about it years later, but at the time it was just sort of like, again, like this was following a couple bad Superman movies, and ages beyond the only good Superman movie, the only good superhero movie, Superman 1 and maybe 2,
right?
Were long gone. Like this was as good as it gets in that sense. Like
it was a good superhero movie, and it was really different than Superman 1. Like it was good in a really different way. It like was its own movie.
Yeah.
Like the Marvel movies, the MCU, which I generally really enjoy, except for things like Guardians, they are and Thor Ragnarok. They tend to be a little cookie cutter. Like they are a little bit interchangeable in tone. And hey, that makes for some nice consistency. There's a good argument for that. But like Batman, there's no movie like Tim Burton's Batman, right? That is just like a unique animal. Even Batman Returns is quite different, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
That movie is, I mean, we're going to talk about it next week, and I think we're just going to talk about Danny DeVito the whole time, because that movie is wild. Balls to the walls the whole time.
Yeah.
Because I rewatched Batman this weekend, I might rewatch Batman Returns over the next couple of days, because I'm like, I haven't seen that in forever. And a lot of people say it's better than Batman, and I remember it being about as good, but I need to rewatch it, so I need to remind myself.
My take on Batman Returns is that it was better. I remember in the theater being, it was more cohesive, but I don't think it hit as well. I think people didn't like it as much, but it was still a huge hit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to rewatch it, because last time you and I watched it,
it was my first time again.
Oh, it was your first time, and I was like, this is I did not really like it, but I remember loving it when I first saw it. But it's like Batman's hardly in the movie, which is kind of strange.
Which is also
it's mostly Catwoman.
It's also sort of true of this movie, right? Joker covers a lot of this.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
A lot more screen
Jordan,
time.
what did you think when you saw this movie 2 years ago?
This movie?
Yeah.
I loved it. You're talking about Batman, not Batman Returns.
Batman.
I'm talking about Batman. I did a switch.
Yeah, I loved it. It was just like when I was growing up, there was just a lot of movies I missed, and I think it's just because like maybe my parents didn't really care for them, and that's the only reason why I didn't see it. Because if I would have, it would have been like one of my favorite things. And that's how this one felt.
You're a huge Burton fan, so it was shocking to me that you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I probably had seen a lot of it on like TV, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I do remember thinking, because for me, it's like Christian Bale's Batman to me because of like my age. But with Michael Keaton being Batman, I think he wasn't like bad or anything. I just like don't really think he was a good Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
To me, but I also don't like find Michael like I think Michael Keaton's funny. Yeah. And I think he's got like kind of a villainous vibe to me, and so I didn't really buy that he was like suave and good looking.
Yeah.
For this movie, but I mean he's a great actor and he did a good job.
It's also just interesting because he defined how the modern Batman is still played, or he and Tim Burton together. The gravelly voice of Batman, sort of this, the sort of like the look of Batman's mansion still looks the same in the Bale movies to me. It's like a little less Burton-y, but it's still like the gothic-y look of it all. I don't know. It was all defined in this movie in a weird way. I can't believe how much of it sticks.
Yeah.
I know, it's weird. Even seeing the previews for Matt Reeves' Batman movie that's coming out in a couple of years, it's like we're still following Burton's
I keep
mold.
waiting for the Batman movie that will redefine it and try to do its own thing. It feels like the sort of movie that could, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it'll never happen.
I mean, Christian
Yeah.
Bale, Heath Ledger redefined the Joker. I think. Like,
Yeah.
I think his Joker is superior to Nicholson's, even though Nicholson's was great. Like Heath Ledger
Right.
is the iconic Joker in my mind.
Heath Ledger was better, but
Yeah.
this is more like the comic book Joker.
Definitely.
He wears the
Definitely.
costumes. He's silly. I don't know. There's something about him. I remembered being cooler on this Jack Nicholson, and now that I've rewatched it, I mean, to me, the Joker's Mark Hamill, his voice on the cartoon.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Oh, man.
that's what because what's that one called with him?
The animated
Batman,
series.
the animated series.
Just but that there's that.
The
Okay,
Mask
but
of the
there's a movie
Phantasm?
where he's Joker. Yes, that
Yes.
one. I've seen that, and when I saw that before Batman, and when I watched this, I was like, oh, he is doing that Joker, and I love that. I really love that
Yeah.
Joker.
I saw Mask of the Phantasm opening night too. That was a much different audience. There was maybe 20 people there. No overt
Wow.
cheers. That movie did not succeed as a
Well,
theater.
we might have to do a bonus episode.
I love that.
That's a
movie.
great
It was
movie.
Great.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's right.
Just
Me and my younger brother somehow fell into a trend of watching every Batman movie on opening night, good or bad. Because we had seen like 3 of them in a row on opening night, and he notes things like that. And when I was in college and the trailer for Batman and Robin came out, the Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy one, and I saw that
good
commercial
one.
and
The good one.
it looked terrible. No, the worst one.
The best one. I think the best one. That's the only one that's worked.
It was the commercials were so bad and it looked so awful. And I remember sitting there with my college roommates and we're all like, this movie looks atrocious. And I said to my roommates, like, I'm probably going to end up seeing it in theaters. Because that was back then, there was so few superhero movies. I'm like, I'm going to go. It could be.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the phone rings and it's my younger brother. And he's like, hey, I just saw the commercial for Batman and Robin. Do you want to see it opening night with me? And I came back and they're like, who was it? And I had to tell my roommates, it's like, I just made plans to see this movie we were making fun of on opening night. And we did see it opening night and it was terrible, but it was a fun movie watching experience. So
That was the only movie I
Totally.
walked out of. I saw that in New York City, and I halfway through Batman and Robin, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. Like, I don't need to see the rest of this.
Have you seen the rest of it since then?
Yeah. I was at a party a couple years ago where it was on, and so I watched it.
Yeah.
And I was when I watched it that second time, I was mostly like trying to analyze, why is this so bad? When you guys get to it in your podcast, like, why is it so bad? Because some really talented actors, huge budget.
Yeah.
We do have a guest on for that episode, and she is excited to do it because she said she's come around on the movie. So
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
we'll see
That'll
the
be
other
interesting.
side of that.
I think if you watch it as a comedy, as a comedic movie, not unlike the 66 movies, it holds up way better, but it's just a shame for it to go that direction when, these sort of weird, silly movies become flat out comedies, but
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to show you this,
Oh, you
Jordan. This might embarrass you, but Jordan
Okay.
drew this after we watched the movie
is
last
that
night.
Jack Skellington in the Joker outfit?
I guess so.
Oh, no, just a skeleton head in the
she
Joker.
has these like skeleton things she does, and this is the Joker in it.
I love
I
it.
see that.
We'll have to post that on our
That's
Instagram
extremely
when we.
cool. I love that.
I did want to watch his movie.
Thanks.
I loved seeing him in all his classic purple suit uniforms
Yeah,
that you just don't see him in at
it's
all.
so cool. And I mean, we're gonna be talking about this so much during the series, but I've been really burned out on the mythos of the Joker.
Okay.
And rewatching this movie, it's like, oh yeah, he can be funny, he can tell bad jokes, and he doesn't have to dance and contemplate suicide the whole movie. It's like,
Yeah.
this is much more interesting to me
In
than
I agree with you. I think what you're saying is this, and if I'm not, correct me. I want some happiness in the stew of a superhero movie, even with a psychopath killer like the Joker. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. Like this movie defined Batman for until the Nolan movies, I think, because even though the animated
Right.
series was so good. And I think most Batman purists would say the animated series was like a more faithful and reliable portrayal of Batman stuff than the Burton movie. The Burton movie, because it was a movie, because it was so successful, still dominated perception. Like it was Keaton and Nicholson until Nolan came along.
yeah,
right.
I I don't know. I'm impressed by it in an era now where like everything seems to be a sequel and a retread and a remake and a reboot. To see something that sort of is the one that established the property is kind of fun. I don't know. I don't know what has a chance to do that anymore.
I think like the first 40 minutes of this movie when I was rewatching it are great, are almost perfect.
Mhm.
Yes.
I weirdly feel bad. I feel like the Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger stuff is bad. She's the only female
Yeah.
character, but she shows up to try to find out who Batman is, and then just falls in love with Bruce Wayne, gets chased by the Joker, and that's her whole story at the end. And I was like,
Yep.
this
Yeah.
character has nothing going for her, and those scenes I think slow the movie down. And not like there's much other plot beyond that. Like the Joker gasses the city and then fights Batman. There's not much plot to this movie at all. But I just sort of like wish there was. If Kim Basinger had an actual plot, like if it was like her actively investigating the Batman, like a Lois Lane type, I think this movie would be better for it. But it's a shame.
I do really love though I forget his name. I think it's Eckhart, the other reporter.
Robert Wool.
Like I did not like him.
Robert
Yeah.
Wool.
Yeah, I didn't like him. And then when we rewatched
I think his name was
it,
Knox, right?
I was
Eckhart's the
okay.
Eckhart's the bad cop.
oh, he's the detective. Yeah.
He's a dirty
but
cop.
on rewatching it this time, I was like, I love this guy's energy.
I love
like
Robert
I
Wool.
love this like noir guy. He's
Yeah.
amazing.
He's great in that movie.
I don't know how I could ever not enjoy that performance.
The CW TV shows that do all the DC superheroes last year pandemic did Crisis of Infinite Earths, where all of the their shows crossed over with each other, and then they also had like cameos by anyone they could get from any other version of a DC movie, and Robert Wool was the first one that showed up. He's like reading a newspaper about bat sightings or something in front of a very Tim Burton-esque backdrop before his like universe gets wiped out, and I was like, "Oh, it's Robert Wool."
He's so memorable for not that big a part, but he really stands out.
Yeah.
I feel like he is a big part of the experience of watching that
He was also way all over the trailer for it.
He's
Was he
quotable,
really?
right? He's sound biteable.
Yeah.
Like his part actually
yeah.
is condensable. As you know, so a lot of the coolness of this movie is sort of you need more time to let it soak in, or they wanted to keep it a surprise, right? Like the Batmobile was a
Yeah.
surprise. Like when we saw
Yeah.
the car in the movie, it was like, what? Oh my god!
That's so cool.
I mean, this movie is filled with those lines. Like the soundtrack also had one of those things was just like a remix of a Prince song with lines from the movie. So like when I watch the movie now and these lines happen, I think of the song too at the same time. Like "Stop
Right.
the presses" is not that memorable a line other than it's in one of the songs.
Yeah.
Right,
Who's
right.
that? Stop the presses. Vicky Vale. It's just like that sort of weird remix.
Bat Dance was the craziest part of this movie. Like Bat Dance was on the radio so much.
Was it really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. People played Bat Dance all the time. You'd go to the beach, people just be blasting Bat Dance and like grooving. I mean, people on the beach would look like the Joker gang, like dancing and just happily grooving to Bat Dance, which is one of the strangest Prince songs ever. It's a testament to how huge Prince was. I mean, I don't think Bat Dance is good. Okay. Like I think Prince is a genius and like is a, insanely masterful songwriter, musician, singer, like a perfect pop star. He's done at least, conservatively speaking, 15 perfect pop songs, and Bat Dance is not one of them, but it exploded and people were so excited. And even as a 19-year-old fan of Batman, happy to see the movie doing well. I remember being on a beach with my college friends, seeing somebody put out their boombox in the sand and press play and blast Bat Dance. And I even remember being like, that's weird. That is a weird choice.
We had that soundtrack,
so
and I listened to it a few times, but it was I don't remember liking that soundtrack. I think we listened to it mostly because it was sort of like watching the movie.
Yeah.
Just reminded us of our experience watching the movie.
Yeah,
it's a big, for me, Kevin, and our brother Brian. I feel like it's a huge part of our family lore, right? I feel like the night we saw Batman,
yes,
is like a milestone in our family history. That sounds insane, but I think it is.
it was the.
That's awesome.
It was the. It probably is still the biggest movie watching experience of my life. I
I
was very excited to see Fellowship when that came out, and like
yeah.
this
Yeah.
first Star Wars
You were so
prequel was
excited
kind
for
of a
Fellowship,
big
Kevin.
deal.
It was very fun.
And Return of the Jedi, I remember being big, and Last Crusade, like some of these huge blockbuster movies. But Batman was something else. It was like another level of like excitement and to the point where like when I go to opening night movies, I'm trying to recapture that high as much as I
Yeah.
can.
Yes.
Yeah.
I once tried to make a list of my top 10 favorite nights, top 10 days of my life. What are the top 10 days of my whole life? And I put this in one of them. I don't know where I would put it, but it was just like
Probably-
a magic. It was a magic experience.
Probably two. One was my birth. Two was seeing this movie.
Yeah. Okay. One was your birth. I was 5
Yeah,
and I have a vague memory of it, but sure, I'll put it number one.
Yeah.
But because yeah, I don't know, getting sentimental about the movies can sometimes be annoying, but like there are not many movies that are big enough to be an event
Yeah.
that like everybody shows up for and it lives up to the expectation. I mean, it happens, but it's rare, and it's even more rare now, right? Now that like
Yeah.
we have so many different ways. I mean, certainly right now in the pandemic, but even non-pandemic. But it happens now and then where like like the J.J. Abrams Star Wars, that was a big, every Harry Potter movie was like that. Anytime a Harry Potter movie came
Yeah.
out, that was like, okay,
But-
are you seeing it? When are you
But there
seeing
were
it?
fewer movies. It feels
Yeah.
like now there's a blockbuster every weekend over the summer. Like every weekend, there's which blockbuster comes out
Yeah.
this weekend. That was less true then. It was like there's a handful of big movies.
Yeah,
There's
it'd
so
be the
fewer
year's
movies.
blockbuster.
There was fewer TV. Like there was a lot more like you're renting things you never even knew were in the theaters. Like there just weren't like now it's like movies come out. It's like I can't keep up. And back then it was like
Yeah.
you could
Right.
see them
Yeah.
all. You could see all the big movies pretty easily.
Yeah.
It definitely is the only movie where seeing the movie far outweighs the movie itself to me.
The experience,
Yeah.
everything about it. Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm so pleased you guys let us talk about it because, I mean, I don't know. There's no shortage of old middle-aged dudes who want to tell you about when they were younger or whatever. But like, I do think there was a specialness to the event of the release of this movie. The movie is great, and that you can't
Oh,
take
yeah.
that away
Yeah.
from it. But like the hype and the event and the follow-through of this movie's release was insane, and it was really cool to be able to witness it.
And also, like in our town, again, this like midnight showing. It's like whatever that theater held, like 100 people, 150.
Yeah.
I don't know, somewhere in that range.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was just one showing, and then the next showing was like the next day.
Friday night at 7.
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
like we were in our town one of like 100 people who saw this movie because it wasn't like there
Yeah.
weren't multiplexes everywhere where it's like everyone started
Right.
seeing this movie Tuesday night when it started streaming. It goes every 2 hours every day until Friday.
I know when the Star Wars movies, I live in Los Angeles, when the Star Wars movies come out, or some huge movie, the movie theaters in LA, this is a movie town, right? Like this is like the
Mhm.
capital of movies, whatever. So the ArcLight Hollywood, which is sort of like the premier movie theater in Los Angeles, I'm pointing at it dumbly, it doesn't matter. They will like show, they have like 15 screens. They all show like, The Rise of Skywalker, starting
Yeah.
at like midnight until the next day at noon, and then the other movies start seeing. But so it's kind of fun in that context to go like at 2 a.m. and see like
Yeah.
some crazy huge movie, and the lobby is jammed because
Yeah.
everybody in LA wants to see the big event movie. That's kind of fun when that
I mean, I'm
happens.
in New Jersey, and when these Star Wars movies come out, it's like, yeah, I have no trouble getting an opening night ticket if I want one.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
There's so many screenings of it. They're all pretty full, but like unless I'm going to the big crowd, I can get a ticket.
Yeah.
But this was like
Right.
it was hard. We had great seats. I remember us being like dead center.
Me too. We
like, a
were.
third of the
We
way
showed up
back.
early. We were ready. We
Yeah.
were ready 6 months before this movie came out to see it. So.
Here's another real quick. Just I don't want to run out of time before I tell one other nerdy Will story from watching this movie. Will knows which one probably. During
Yeah, I
the
know which one you're talking
origin of Batman, when you see his parents get murdered,
Mhm.
it very much is evocative of the Dark Knight Returns and
a comic book.
in Batman Year One, the comic books that they're telling of this shooting. And in that shooting, there is a scene where Martha Wayne's pearls are ripped off her neck and they like drop into the water. And it's like there's more panels than you would think are devoted to that moment. And during this mugging in the scene where like the mugger pulls the gun on Martha, and there's like just a moment, a pause, and Will just under his breath goes, "The pearls." and then he grabs the pearls and pulls them off. Like Will was chin.
Wow.
And I laughed when
predicted
that
it.
happened, and Brian also
Yeah.
laughed, and we like Will's like, I didn't say that. Like Will, like,
Yeah, they
he
made
was like,
fun of me for it. They're like, "You said the pearls aloud." I was like, "No, I didn't."
was like
They're
in a
"Yeah, you
fugue
did. You
state."
were in a trance." Let me ask Jordan and Micah, it's okay if your answer is not. Do you associate the image of pearls scattering with the murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne? Do you think?
Absolutely.
Because I think that was not true until this comic book I'm talking about, The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, that came out in 1986. I think that established this visual sort of shorthand because it was a comic book, right? So they couldn't show like a gory gunshot,
Right.
or maybe they didn't want to. So the gun gets tangled up in the necklace, and then he pulls the trigger, and her body falling away from the gun rips the pearl necklace, right? And so that's how the comic book shows the death of Martha Wayne without showing the actual wound.
Yeah.
And I remember as a 16-year-old reading the comic book being like, whoa, Jesus, that's brutal, but also kind of cool cinematically, comic book wise.
Yeah.
So in the
Right.
movie, when the movie took that from Dark Knight Returns, I remember being like, I don't remember saying out loud the pearls in some trance state, but I do remember wondering like, oh, are they going to take this cool thing from the comic? And they did.
Yeah.
And I remember being like impressed, like, this movie
Yeah.
is good, motherfucker.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
That seminal comic in this movie, I think those two things imprinted pearls forever as part of that origin. Like she's always wearing a pearl
It's
necklace.
funny now because in every movie they have to even the Joker. I was shocked when they were like, oh, we're gonna show the death of the Wayne. How many times are we gonna kill these guys? And then it's always the close-up of the pearls. It's in every Batman movie, and
It's a
promise
cliche now, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be in the Robert
the new
Pattinson
one.
movie.
Yeah.
It will
It's
be.
like
I guarantee you.
It's like Spider-Man's Uncle Ben saying, with great power comes great responsibility. That has become a weary cliche that gets made fun of in the Spider-Man movies now. But for a while was like the way that a thing showed you, the audience, that they were for real.
The Wayne's death is strange because also, like, if you didn't read comic books, I don't know if people knew that. It's not like the 66 show talked about it.
Yeah. They probably just glossed over
this movie,
that, I'm sure.
this movie opens with a couple and their kid all dressed up coming out of a movie theater going down an alley. I forgot that it starts with like, oh, this is evocative of the Waynes. That we won't.
I know. I always think it's the Waynes.
I have a moment where I'm like, I don't think it starts with this. I remember that being a flashback, and then I'm like, oh wait, these are the people who get mugged. They're coming through. But I was like, it's sort of cool that that's happening like at the very beginning of this movie. It's sort of like this moment keeps happening. Two parents and a child getting accosted in an alley. And Batman, they don't die, at least, and Batman gets their money back. But that scene also had huge cheers throughout it from our theater. The scene where Batman gets shot right away, like he shows up and they shoot him and he collapses. Huge laughs.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Nuts, as it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen, because it was like all this buildup and he gets shot and goes down hard.
Yeah.
It was as if it was a brilliant joke.
We had the most reactive movie audience I've ever been a part of. It was like as one, we were having a joyful conversation with the screen. People were so
and the weirdly not special line that has become meaningful of "I'm Batman." We saw that become like everyone cared about that line for some reason. He goes, "I'm Batman." Just cheers for like 10 minutes after that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's why that line is constantly said now.
It sure worked.
I don't know why. Why is that an important line? Why is just "I'm Batman" a cool line? But it kind of
he's badass. He's announcing his presence with authority.
It sounds silly. I'm dressed as a bat going, "I'm Batman," but it
sounded badass. It worked. It was like a pro wrestler move.
It works every time.
Who are you?
Though.
I'm Batman. Look at me. I'm here as a cape.
BT Dubs, I'm Batman. That's what I want you to call me.
Yeah.
I'm dressed like a bat, so tell everyone I'm Batman, not bad guy or the bat.
Or the bat, not the bat. I could see where you would do that. I don't know, man. That movie was good.
Yeah.
I love big movies when they work.
This is also a movie that like every talk show, like Letterman talked about this movie for like the next year. He made jokes about this movie. Like, it was culturally.
It's also like what
impacted.
It's
everything.
before Jurassic Park. It's like our brain holds on to. It's before Harry Potter was even a book, right? I mean, like, certain things that occupy our mind as the big touchstones did not exist yet. Like, there was kind of more room for this to be one of the dominant big movies of your memory. It was like Jaws, Star Wars, Batman. Like I feel like it's, and this is before Titanic. Like it's kind of diminished, but it used to be one of the premier big movies that you would just say when you were naming big movies. But I think it's kind of gotten shoved aside by other ones a little bit.
Well, there's also just so many of them now, so many superhero movies in general.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for a while it was Superman and Batman, and
I guess if there was a million romantic couples sinking on boats, Titanic would diminish, but it's just the only Titanic. So like,
Right.
But there's a
Well,
million
it's
guys
wild.
in tights beating people up, so Batman
Right.
diminishes.
Yeah.
It's wild too. Like we were talking about the Pearls and the Waynes and but this movie also sets up so many templates for comic book movies. One of them being kind of something that can be a little annoying, but that thing where for a while in any comic book movie they would always kill the villain at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Green Goblin dies.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's the only one that pops in my head right now. But you'd have that. And I think Marvel's kind of taken that back a little bit because now they don't kill their villains every movie. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Still,
the Batman,
this, like,
the
sets
Batman
that
villains
up.
all died. I mean, Lex Luthor didn't die either, but prior to
The
this,
Superman
Lex
movies,
Luthor.
right.
But yeah, the Joker died. The Penguin dies. Catwoman doesn't die, right? She escapes. She's less a villain and more of something
Yeah.
else. The Riddler didn't die. And I remember as a kid being like, "Oh, good, they kept one alive. They could bring one back."
yeah.
It felt
Yeah.
huge to me that the Riddler was still around. I even liked in the Dark Knight movie with Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger doesn't die.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
I always wonder, like in a dream world, like what a third movie would have been had he not
Oh my God.
passed away.
So great. I mean,
but yeah,
Because they could have just done a whole movie with him as Joker again, and we would have
easily.
been
villains,
Yeah.
Easily.
recurring
His
villains
performance was
are
so
such
good.
a big part of superheroes. To kill them off feels like such a waste to me.
Yeah. Particularly when they're like the Green Goblin, killing him in the first
It's-
movie.
it's your
like,
first
but
one.
This is Spider-Man's arch nemesis. This is like the guy, him and Doc Ock, and then you kill Octopus too.
It's
So
also like
it's
these are the first movies like this person didn't exist, gets his powers, his first case is against the worst villain he'll ever face, and he's dead.
Yeah.
It's all downhill from here. It's like it's hard to top that now. I mean, you would never do
Yeah.
it, but like the real thing is like save Joker for movie 3. Don't have the
Right.
Green Goblin for a while. Don't have the biggest ones, but like don't have Magneto in the first X-Men movie. It's like, well, we're not going to get another X-Men movie if we don't use Magneto. So I get it.
right.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Go big.
Hit us, Jordan.
Oh, with some actors.
No, well, I think we've actually covered most of all this extra stuff, but hit us with something,
Anything?
anything.
Anything at all.
I don't know.
Can I hit with
We've
an
been
actor?
really diving into the comic side of
Can
it.
I hit? Can I
What?
hit with an actor? I was excited
Yeah.
rewatching that. I forgot Jack Palance was in this movie. Jack
Oh,
Palance
yeah.
as the crime boss is so fun in his small role. You're my number one guy. It's such a
Oh,
weird
yeah.
scene.
What a weird line.
I love Jack Palance.
And he gets the and. We love actors who get the and
Yeah.
and the
Oh, he
with
got he's the and in the.
and the billing. That's the most fun.
I don't think I knew who
Yeah.
Jack Palance was until City Slickers. Sadly, I did not.
Yeah.
He did not resonate with me until City Slickers when he for some reason was on every award show talking about it. I was like, oh, this guy is Shane, and now he's in every movie I've ever seen somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, Shane.
That's his-
Okay. Because I actually recognize his name more than his face.
Yeah,
When we
me
watched the
too.
movie, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, Jack Palance.
Shane
but
is
I
his
didn't.
big thing.
I couldn't.
Shane? What do you mean Shane?
The movie
he's the
Shane.
bad guy.
He's Shane. Come back, Shane.
No, Alan Ladd is Shane.
No. Jack
I'm gonna look
Palance.
this up.
Isn't Jack
I think
Palance?
I think Palance is the villain in Shane, I think.
Oh wow.
I'm gonna look it
We're
up.
all googling real quick. This is excellent podcast.
Yeah, Alan Ladd plays Shane.
Was Shane the kid?
Nope. Shane is the good guy cowboy in the crazy, shiny,
Oh,
sparkly
well, he's from
suit.
Shane. I had that part right.
But Jack Palance is the main bad guy.
Yeah.
He plays Jack Wilson.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he's in
He's got
Shane.
great bad guy
Okay.
energy.
So I remembered him as the guy from Shane. But anyway, Jack Palance is in a lot of movies and small role. He's very memorable, a memorable look. And when he showed up in this movie, I'd forgotten he was in this. And I
Yeah.
was very excited to see him.
And he's
again.
having so much fun too. It's great.
And everyone's very just keyed into this movie.
Yeah.
It's so out there, and everyone's like, "Yeah, I'm fully committed."
What
to
must
this.
have they thought while making this movie? It's so weird.
I
There's
know.
so many
Well,
shots of like Michael Keaton just like standing and looking up in his bat suit, and like, does he think this movie could be terrible the whole time he's making it? I've made the
Yeah.
biggest mistake of my career. I've ruined my serious acting career by doing this movie.
Yeah.
What's funny is I wanted to point out that Jack Nicholson, I was watching this behind the scenes, and he was talking about how once he signed on to the movie, and I don't know how much he's looking back in revisionist history, but he was saying, I knew for sure that this was going to be a hit. I knew more than anybody else. And he had this contract. So he did not go the route of some of the other jokers who are like, oh, the only way for me to prepare to be a joker is to send dead rats to my crew people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He had an off-the-clock agreement. His contract specified the number of hours he was entitled to have off each day from the time he left the set to the time he reported back for filming, as well as being off for LA Lakers home games. Nicholson demanded that all of his scenes be shot in a 3-week block, but the schedule lapsed into 106 days. He reduced his standard 10 million fee to 6 million in exchange for a cut of the film's earnings, including merchandise, which led to he made at least around 50 million. And biographer Mark Elliott reports that Nicholson may have received as much as $90 million. Like by now from this movie.
Yeah.
It makes sense because like his part is the silliest part. Like he's dancing on a float in a weird backlot filming scene with balloons and everyone. It's like, if this guy didn't think this movie was good, it's hard to imagine he would be willing to act like such an idiot.
It is
In
Yeah.
the bad version of this movie, he comes off looking terrible.
It is just
Oh, yeah.
It's just that he's profited from this movie because he's such an important reason of why it's good, right? So
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
if somebody's
I'm
going to make
happy
bank
about
off this
that.
film, Nicholson is the second guy I would pick who should after Tim Burton.
Oh yeah.
It's like him and George Lucas made the best deals in Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what it
also
reminds me
Nicholson
of,
at
for
that
sure.
time was in so many big movies. He's only got to make a good deal on one of them. So like, you know what I mean, he's not hurting for cash no matter which way he cuts his
He
deal.
has the leverage to know if like
Yeah.
I don't do this movie, it hurts your movie more than it hurts me. Where Michael Keaton
Right.
probably can't back out of this movie. Even Kim Basinger wasn't a
Yeah.
huge star, but like Jack Nicholson was big.
Right.
Prince also could have backed out.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like the Prince thing is so strange.
One thing that is disappointing looking back on it though is I love Billy D. Williams' performance as Harvey
very
Dent
fun.
in this, and I really wish, and we'll get into it when we get to this movie, so I won't spoil it, but I wish that the contracts would have been signed and whatnot to have him as Two-Face.
Yeah.
Because he signed on to this movie with like, in the future, I'll be Two-Face. And
Yeah.
he was excited and
And
wanted to
would
do
have been
that.
great.
He's very fun.
And he's so good.
Commissioner Gordon is sort of a non-entity, and the mayor is sort of a non-entity that
Yeah.
Billy D.
Yeah.
Williams sort of carries any of
Yeah.
the city government scenes just on his charisma alone.
Yeah.
It would have been an amazing movie to see Billy D. Williams as the villain. Just like what's his face was good in the Nolan movies. What's that guy's name?
Aaron Eckhart.
Kevin.
Oh,
Yeah, he was great.
He was
Yeah.
great. He was as good as I could hope a Two-Face would be.
Batman's
Yeah.
done all right. Batman has done all right in his portrayals of TV and movies and stuff like that. They've gotten him right more than they've gotten him wrong. Superman is way more unevenly portrayed.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's way easier to find a bad Superman movie than a bad Batman movie. Although you can do it.
Well,
Definitely.
The Christopher Reeve is still
What
so
can-
iconic.
Christopher Reeve was
Oh,
never
yeah.
tarnished. Like he remains this like perfect person to play Superman, despite any bad movies he was in.
Can you both, though, I would love to hear just a quick rundown of what you think of the different movies. Because I feel like
About the Batman franchise.
what do you think? I feel like we've actually covered this movie pretty well in a roundabout way. It's
Yeah.
not the usual way we do
Sorry.
it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Sorry, we
No.
we-
That's why we have
we
guests.
went nuts.
No, I loved it, and I was
Yeah.
glad because part of me getting you guys, I was like, I hope they can like speak to the comic book nature of it, and you
And
did.
the time period it came out.
Yeah.
So
that's all we do.
I would love to hear though what you think of like the different sets of Batman.
I'll defer
and
to
maybe
I'll defer
like
to
a loose
I'll defer to
ranking.
Kevin. I think Kevin's got a more passionate opinion than me, and I'll just chime in when I
You
want.
mean
undermine him.
What do you want me to like? What I think of each movie overall?
Yeah, what do you like? What do you like or dislike of
Just
all
like
the
a
all the
bullet
big
point
big
kinda
Batman
thing.
franchises?
I mean, the Adam West Batman is delightfully fun in a way that appeals to everyone except for like teenagers. I think it is just like perfect for kids and perfect for adults. I love that Batman. This Batman movie, it's hard to separate it from the impact it had on everything that follows it. But after rewatching it, I liked it a lot more than I remembered. And Michael Keaton still, when you see him, like he still is identified purely with Batman. Like Batman is like his number one credit,
Right.
and it
Right,
will
even
be
when
forever.
Birdman
And
came
that's
out.
crazy to be true after all these years. And Batman Returns, I sort of feel like Batman Returns and Batman are sort of one movie in a weird way. They're same director, same stars.
Yeah.
What was the third one? Batman
Batman
Forever
I
was the
think, is
third one.
third.
That's Val Kilmer. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
disappointed
Jim
with that
Carrey.
as a kid. I remember thinking it was okay, but it definitely felt like a huge step down from Batman and Batman Returns. And I remember like older people than me, like the guy who ran my comic shop, liked this movie. He's like, this felt more like my Batman. And so because like, it was more fun and silly. And obviously like Jim Carrey is the Riddler, but that's the goofy Two-Face sort of knocked me out of it. And you could see the signs that it was getting too silly. And Batman and Robin was terrible, though I think Uma Thurman's really good in it. I think I wish she was in a good Batman movie playing a good Poison Ivy, because I think she would have nailed it. But that movie is bonkers and bad. But I talk about that movie maybe more than any other Batman movie. So I don't like Batman Begins that much. I'm weirdly in a minority there. I got bored with all the origin stuff. It took too long. I wanted more Batman in my Batman movie. And people love it.
Okay.
And I found like the Scarecrow plot at the end a little too silly for this grounded movie. But it wasn't bad. I just sort of was like, I don't get the hype. But I love The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight blew me away. I was literally sitting on the edge of my seat. And I love Dark Knight Rises. People hate that movie, I guess, to some people, but I like that not as much as Dark Knight. But Dark Knight Rises, I thought it was thrilling. And I love that Catwoman, Anne Hathaway's Catwoman.
Yeah.
I thought was so fun. It's a big bloated movie, like a lot of Nolan's things.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I think about rewatching it, it seems exhausting. But in theaters, I remember watching it and it ended going, oh man, I felt like I didn't breathe for the last hour. I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
The Batman versus Superman is one of the most atrocious Batman movies of all time, though, including one of my favorite Batman scenes of all time is the Martha scene. Is so funny. If that scene was done with comedic intent, it would be my favorite scene.
Jordan doesn't know. She
Yeah,
has
Martha
avoided
scene
that
is-
movie, and it's iconically bad. It's like
It's terrible. It is the worst thing ever, and because of that,
it defies all logic.
It wraps around.
Okay.
It's so terrible. It wraps around to being one of my favorite things in a superhero movie. And Justice League is sort of a bland mess, though. There's an early scene in Justice League where Batman is sort of leaping around and flipping and stuff that he doesn't do in any other movie. Like in this movie, he's so stiff. He stands still.
Yeah.
And
He can't turn his
kicks.
neck.
And there's a lot of scenes where he's just sort of standing square-shouldered, facing people, and just like there's such a stiffness to Batman that is pretty much true in almost all the movies, except for Justice League. He leaps around. They just CGI him out of the movie, and it's clearly just a CGI Batman doing all this stuff. But it was sort of nice to see him leap around a little bit. But that movie's sort of boring.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the Zack Snyder cut. Maybe that'll change my mind about it when I.
How about Batman the Animated Series?
Perfect.
Oh yeah.
How about
And
Batman the video game, the Arkham video game?
I haven't really played through those. Well, I think you're the video game guy, but I also think
They're
Batman
great.
Beyond
Those are good.
is a tremendous cartoon because it was pitched from the studio first. They wanted them to make a Batman start with a kid as Batman, and they want it to be like a future Batman. They're like, make a future kid Batman, like Batman Jr. And so the guys who made Batman the Animated Series were like, oh, this is going to be terrible. They sat down and they came out with a cartoon that ended up being darker and cooler than anything that should be true. And that cartoon is phenomenally good.
How about the Super Friends, 1970 Super Friends, Hall of Justice?
I mean, that is the Superman show with a bunch of characters. Like, that's my version of the Super Friends is always The villain's plot is always get rid of Superman. We could take care of everyone else in one fell swoop, and then Superman comes back and saves the day. That felt like almost every plot.
Okay.
No punches are thrown. That cartoon
Yeah.
is bad, but also an important part of my childhood.
Okay. I like it.
I've always thought, I mean, when they announced this new Batman movie, which I am excited to see, I'm just confused that they haven't made a Batman Beyond movie, the live action. It feels so
I think
ready
it's
to do
just
something
tough
like that.
to make it, even though it's an important part of kids who watched it. It's not like a known thing. Like the comic books for Batman Beyond never
Yeah.
sell that well. It weirdly feels like, oh yeah, it was really important, but it also is such a tiny hiccup in the other than protecting the IP. What's in it for Warner Brothers? Why make Batman Beyond?
Right.
Just make Batman. It's more likely that they would do something like Into the Spider-Verse, right? Like Miles Morales is also a tough sell
Right.
in the sense that, well, we already have Spider-Man. Why do a different Spider-Man? If we're going to make a Spider-Man movie, let's do the main one that everybody knows. Why introduce everyone to this new character that's sort of a harder sell and it's sort of a weirder thing? But when you do it right, it works. So, but
Yeah.
Warner Brothers
Right.
has shown that they don't do things right. So you just need someone who's really passionate about that character, who has an idea that can sell it to an audience that's never heard of it.
Right.
And
that's
that's
true.
tough.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the Spider-Verse of Batman.
Yeah.
I'm ready for a complete reinvention.
Yeah.
And
You
Batman
know?
Beyond's probably the best example.
But-
Batman Beyond's also got a lot of Spider-Man DNA in him, so he could work.
Yeah.
Will,
Well, do you
no,
Oh, go ahead,
ask your
go ahead.
question and then.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you had anything else in regards to this movie that you want to discuss, because I think I've covered all my stuff.
I think I talked about everything I have.
If I could grow hair, I would carve a bat signal into it.
Will, what do you think of the video game, Batman video games?
They're terrific. Oh my gosh. They're influential and they're amazing. And Mark Hamill plays the Joker in them.
Yeah.
Micah loves those,
Uh,
and I love watching them.
yeah.
They're
Kevin
so fun.
Conroy's
Yeah.
voice is Batman.
Oh,
Yeah. to me.
They were immersive and totally affecting and thrilling experiences.
I read a ton of comics, and when I read comic books, if when I'm reading a Batman comic, Kevin Conroy's voice comes into my head, I'm like, oh, they got his voice right. And same thing with Mark Hamill Joker. That doesn't happen as much, but for a while, it felt like every comic I read was like, yeah, this could be Kevin Conroy reading this, and it would work. Because it just like that imprinted so perfectly for so long between Justice Leagues and Batman cartoons and everything, these video games. Kevin Conroy, and Mark Hamill, love it.
what would you both recommend as like for anyone who hasn't jumped into a Batman comic book?
Batman
what
Year
would
One.
be a good one to
Yeah,
start?
Batman
with?
Year One.
It's called Batman
Okay.
Year One by Frank Miller and Dave Mazzucchelli.
It's only four issues. It's
Not
only
read that
4
one.
issues. It's a real quick read.
Yep. It's fun, lean, mean, beautiful. It's a perfect comic
It is
book.
one of the best comic books.
Oh,
One of the best superhero
Ever
comic
done.
books ever made.
Yeah.
When I lend it to people, my story is always that they always say after they finish, they're like, "Give me something else like this," and I'm like, "Well, there's nothing else like this. This is as good as it gets." I started you with the best thing.
No contest.
Oh wow.
That's the
I'll have to read
recommendation.
it. I've read I've read Nightfall, like 2 of the volumes,
Mhm.
and they're great.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
And then I read The Killing Joke, right? That's
Oh,
what
yeah,
it's called?
yeah.
And Long Halloween.
Oh yeah.
You've read that
If
one
you
too.
like
Yeah.
Long Halloween,
That's like
those
my
are all
comic
great.
book.
if you like Long Halloween, you're gonna
Yeah.
love Year One. Long Halloween is
cool.
basically
Cool.
made by people who liked Year One a lot.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, Long Halloween is maybe my favorite of the Batman stuff I've read.
Sure.
I mean, I've read much more Spider-Man. I haven't read a whole lot of
Well,
Batman, but
I remember
you're
loving
gonna
it.
love Year One. I
Okay, we'll do it.
I will buy it from you if you don't like it when it's done. When you're done reading it,
Yeah, we'll reimburse you if you don't
I'm
like
so sure you'll enjoy it. That money is safe. I'm gonna spend all my money, so it'll bankrupt me if you do ask for that money. That's how sure I am that you'll like it.
okay.
it.
Well, yeah. Do you two have anything to plug?
Yes.
I mean, of course, your podcast.
That's all we have to plug. Our podcast, screw it. We're just going to talk about comics. We do this kind of BS for the whole time about different
It's so
comics,
good.
and please check it out. And
Yeah, we're
we're doing a season on Secret Wars right now, which is this 1980s crossover, really fun, commercially huge, critically tolerated series that we adore. And
And we're about to launch into a season in a little bit with a bunch of cool guests. Some of them will just be funny comedians. Some of them will be comic creators. It should be a fun season.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sweet.
I will. Yeah, I'll keep on reading through Spider-Man. I mean, listening through Spider-Man, and then I'll get going on the Secret Wars, because what I was excited about is in your podcast is you've covered quite a few portions by now, because you've been doing it for several years, and so now I kind of know, because I pretty much only know about Spider-Man, and so this gives me a chance to go, oh, cool, they covered this series. I could check that out and learn more about. Because I just love comic books, but it's a daunting task to jump into.
Yeah,
stuff.
there's so much.
We ended up covering year one too, so we weren't going to, and then we covered an issue with somebody else, and then we had to finish it because we got so excited talking about it.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Sweet.
So that's what you have to do. Our guests,
Yeah.
or I mean our
listeners,
not our guests.
I mean,
You're our
we're
guests.
biased, of course, but we think the comics we cover on our podcast are good. Yeah. So,
and as far as us, I think this is coming out in March, and my album Imbalances has been out for a year. So, audience, go back and listen. It's been a year.
what's your album?
A year. It's called Imbalances, and it's my name.
Oh, cool.
Is the artist, and it came out the week before the stay-at-home order.
No,
So
the week of.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
You played your show when our governor was like, everyone, no, don't go to work anymore.
yeah, like a couple days after, and it was like that was before we kind of knew what was happening.
Yeah,
So,
yes.
and so it was a perfect time to go on tour for the album.
By which you mean you didn't.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah. So audience, go back and give it a listen. It's I still love that album. After a year, I still like it.
That's great. I'll check it out.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, let me know what you think.
I'll send you a scathing
But
review.
thanks. Yeah. Thanks for listening, or thanks for coming on, you
Yes,
two.
thank you so much.
I mean, we had Morpheus the Dream Lord on.
Yes,
How about
one of
that?
our favorite CBB characters.
Thank you.
Yes.
I love getting to do it.
Yeah. We always jump when your name's on the list on Monday morning.
I forget the character's name, but it's a little bit more recent one that you've done where you work at John Hopkins or something.
Stanley Chamberlain. I had this whole other. I've told Kevin about this. I had this whole thing planned for that character, and just in an offhanded mention that he went to medical school, I mentioned what I meant to say was at orientation, and then for some reason I said at initiation, and John Gabris, who was a guest and good friends with Kevin, jumped on that. He's like, initiation? You had like a ritual? And then I just felt compelled to yes and to be like, oh yeah, ritual. And then that was the next half an hour was me off the seat of my pants trying to make up this satanic ritual that this guy had gone through. I mean, I literally was just following Gabris and Ackerman. Maybe Ben Rogers was on that episode too, and just like whatever they told me to. I was just trying to say yes to any question they answered, but I was completely underwater for that whole episode. Just
it was so funny.
Barely.
It made
up.
the best ofs.
Yeah,
I think that
I
was
was
in
so
the top
proud
10.
it did make the best ofs for Comedy Bang. I was so legitimately thrilled. I mean, doing Bang Bang is a joy no matter what. But I normally am not able to swing with the huge heavy hitters on that show. But that was a happy accident where it like crested to the top of viewers' list, and I was like so excited. Vulture did like their favorite Comedy Bang Bang characters, and they put Stanley Chamberlain in their list, and I was like, it shouldn't count. I didn't mean to do this character. I was literally just following Gabris and Ackerman, but it was fun.
Oh man, that's
those
so
are
funny.
always our favorites, because when you can hear, especially when Scott Ackerman is just like busting a gut because he can't believe that whatever was planned just got thrown out the window.
He loves it.
Is always the
But
funniest stuff.
He is a truly like brilliant point guard in that respect. I'm on the show that comes out tomorrow, Comedy Bang Bang.
Cool.
As we're recording this, so it will already be like a month old by the time this episode is released. And I had something in mind, and immediately it gets like sidelined. Immediately,
Cool.
And it was really fun. I love it.
Awesome. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah, but thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
And we're big fans, and we'll keep on listening to your podcast.
Thanks
and
so much.
Sending you listener mail as we go along.
Please do.
And thanks for coming on. Well, hopefully we can have you on another time too.
Enjoy all the movies you're gonna watch.
Thanks for having us. Enjoy the rest of the franchise.
We'll try. All right. See you later, audience. Next week is Batman Returns.
Micah Jordan.